Hello friend, I want to tell you about the Smart Fortwo car. In the late 90s, a car debuted on the market that was supposed to revolutionize the concept of a city car. The Smart company, owned by Daimler, prepared a short, good quality and quite expensive car for two people and a bit of luggage. Looking at the number of these cars on European roads and the third generation already in production, Smart can be considered a success. The only question that remains is, how does such a car perform after years of use? The design of the Smart is quite interesting. The entire body is, in a sense, a safety cage, tritium, with wheels spaced at the corners. Safety? Contrary to appearances, it is at a good level, although the Smart is devoid of any crumple zones. Its shell does not deform, and the entire vehicle bounces off the obstacle in the event of an impact. The visible rollover bar is important, and is usually painted a different shade at the factory than the rest of the bodywork. It is stiff enough that there was no problem creating a convertible version. The covering is made of plastic, and subsequent panels can be replaced relatively freely, so collision repairs are relatively easy. It is worse with cars after accidents. Such cars should be absolutely avoided. Technologically, Smart is not suitable for repair if the skeleton structure is damaged. The Smart Fortwo's drive unit is a small engine, max 0.8 L, and a gearbox placed transversely at the rear, under the boot floor. It's easy to guess that it powers the rear axle wheels. Here we have a dead-on axle design rarely seen today, attached to a subframe. At the front, depending on the year, a transversely mounted leaf spring, up to 2001, and McPherson struts, from 2001, were used. You won't find many traditional solutions here. For example, the wishbones are unusual. It is worth mentioning the gearbox, which is always semi-automatic. In some models, you have to manually change gears to higher ones, and the reduction is automatic. In others, we have full automation, but it is still a classic manual gearbox, only controlled automatically. Engines. Under the Smart Fortwo floor, only small-capacity 3-cylinder turbocharged engines were installed. The petrol engines were 0.6 liters, 45 hydrogen phosphide, and 0.7 liters, 50 or 60 hydrogen phosphide, while the diesel marked with the abbreviation CDI had a capacity of 0.8 liters and a power of 41 HP. After the facelift in 2002, the Brabus version debuted with a 0.7-liter unit with 75 HP and the best performance. Tuners in Germany easily achieved power reaching 100 HP. Contrary to appearances, Smart is not a slow car, although acceleration to 100 km per hour takes the weaker versions over 18 seconds. However, this is the fault of the gearbox, not the engine. The car is very light, weighing about 700 kilograms. Thanks to this, it works very well in the city. Flexibility is beyond reproach. What's broken? Smart Fortwo is generally a failure-prone car and not exceptionally durable, but maintenance costs are not horrendously high. Petrol engines, despite turbocharging, are not exceptionally complicated, and even major repairs are done at a price of around $800. It is worse when the turbocharging is also suitable for repairs, which generates an additional $400. However, this is an area that is more durable than the unit itself. Unfortunately, the Smart engine is a bit like the Maluch engine. It wears out very quickly. Often, units that have covered less than 100,000 kilometers are suitable for repair. Others last up to about 150,000 kilometers. This is more or less the engine's durability limit. The positive side is that this engine is quite reliable and not demanding in terms of maintenance. It has a chain drive, so you only change the spark plugs, fluids and filters. However, you shouldn't underestimate the chain, because it can stretch in intensive city driving. Interestingly, you won't change the oil in the garage, because there's no drain plug. You have to suck it out. It's worth checking the oil level regularly, because the consumption can be high, and leaks are not uncommon. Diesels are much more durable, but have slightly more expensive equipment. They can easily reach mileage of 200,000 kilometers and more. Unfortunately, they wear out clutches that cost about $200 with a dual-mass flywheel more quickly, and they also leak more often. A small repair, which can be called a repair, should be done every 100 to 120,000 kilometers. Then it is worth sealing the engine, replacing the clutch, checking and possibly replacing the timing drive. Equipment components are prone to failure. Most often, it is the starter and fuel pump. The electrical system, which is extensive for such a small vehicle, also tends to fail. Although the engine is not a component that immobilizes the car, unfortunately this problem concerns the gearbox. Semi-automatics are mechanically very durable, but the control often fails. Not only the gearbox itself, but also the clutch, which is a non-detachable module. It is durable, but it does not always work, which causes a forced stop and often the need to call a tow truck. The clutch actuator and the gear selection actuator fail most often. The suspension is fine, and if something needs to be fixed, it's one of the pins or the steering gear. The rear axle, despite its unusual design today, doesn't cause any major problems. Just like the bodywork, which generally doesn't corrode because there's not much to corrode, but in pre-facelift cars, superficial corrosion may appear on the supporting elements. The exhaust rarely corrodes, but it's worth knowing that it's short and has a catalytic converter inside. Its wear means replacing the entire exhaust system. Operating costs, prices and availability of spare parts. Operating costs depend to a large extent on the technical condition of the model you buy. Assuming that the car is fully functional, it is not bad. You will be exposed to individual failures. Even if the gearbox control breaks down, repairs cost several hundred, not several $100s. The engine is also quite trivial. You can reduce your operating costs by finding a mechanic who knows these cars or is simply a good mechanic. There is no shortage of garages that can handle smarts. It is important to know that many repairs can be more expensive than in the case of traditional cars due to the limited access to some components. You shouldn't be afraid of smart and discouraged by the fact that you won't buy every part in the first car shop you come across. Virtually everything is available, including the materials needed for a major engine overhaul. Some things are more expensive than for normal cars, but don't exaggerate. The used parts market doesn't look too bad either, so using a smart isn't as bad as you might sometimes hear. Fuel consumption is high. Only diesels are economical in terms of the vehicle. Petrol engines in city traffic can easily use up to 8L, 100 kilometers and more, but a lot depends on the type of use and the city itself. Diesels use about 5 to 6L, 100 km. Of course, we are not talking about fuel consumption on the road, because Smart is not a car for routes. Is it worth buying? Smart Fortwo is a specific car and should be bought as such. Only for a single person or a couple without children can it be the only car in the household. Generally, it is treated rather as an option for the city next to a normal car. Is it worth buying a Smart Fortwo? Yes, absolutely, provided that the car is unlikely to be driven outside the city. It is worth it because there is no car on the market that works so well in cities. It is worth it because repairs are cheap, although the Smart is not reliable. It is even worth buying a car with an engine that needs to be repaired and having it repaired yourself, knowing where you stand. Why? Because buying a model that supposedly has a working engine does not guarantee long-term, trouble-free operation. If you buy a Smart, you should include the engine capital in the starter package. Choose diesel or petrol, a matter of taste, expected operating time and the depth of your wallet, because you will pay more for a diesel at the time of purchase and service, but less at the pump. Thanks for listening to me. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and rate my video. If you know of any problems with this car that I haven't mentioned, be sure to write about them in the comments.
I have good news for you. Now, if you are planning to buy a used car, or learn more about your car, you no longer need to search for the information you need on the internet. We have collected everything in one place for you, on the website carme.pro. Here you can find out everything about the car. What breaks and at what mileage, any problems with engines, chassis or gearboxes, which trim levels are better not to mess with, and how not to lose money buying a used car. You will learn all this on CarMe.pro.